All right, so yeah, I am Tim. Thank you everybody for coming. So tonight we begin our 10 question series. It felt forever since we were able to get together and we're actually able to see each other again. So this is nice. So we have a brand new series, 10 questions. Of course, it's not just 10 questions. We're also going to provide you with 10 answers. But before that, make sure that you check us out, NewYorkApologetics.com. If you haven't already, like us, Facebook.com/NYA Long Island chapter. So look for us. New York Apologetics is just so how you can stay up on what we're doing and the events that we're having and whatnot. So the 10 questions that we're going to be discussing throughout our series. So it's going to be one per meeting, 10 questions. So here are our questions. Okay, so see, these are some of the biggest questions that people have. So why believe that God exists? Okay, is the resurrection true? If God, there really is a God who loves us, He's all-knowing, all-powerful and whatnot, why is there still evil in the world? Does science disprove religion, science or evolution or whatever? Are they at odds with religion? Why trust the Bible? I mean, we base our lives, our faith on this book. Why? Why do we trust it? Does the Bible condone slavery? This has been a huge objection against the Bible. Just supposed atrocities in the Bible. If God is so good, why is there so much evil? But also, if God is so good, why does He allow or condone all these things in the past, in the Old Testament? Is it intolerant to think Jesus is the only way? Is it intolerant? Look, we're dealing with apologetics. Apologetics deals with the truthfulness of Christianity. But do you realize that people have kind of moved beyond truth? They don't just want things to be true anymore. They want to know, well, is it good? Does it align with what I think and what I feel and what's going on in the culture? So these are all things that we need to keep in mind. We need to hit everybody's needs, what everybody's looking for. How can a loving God send anyone to hell? Is Jesus a ripoff of pagan gods? Now, if you've never heard this before, it might sound weird, but this is a big thing that you're going to find on the internet. Okay, that gets passed around a lot on the internet, that Jesus is simply a mythical figure made up from all of these other pagan, dying, and rising gods. And then are miracles possible? I mean, if miracles aren't possible, then there goes the resurrection, there goes, the Bible. It rests on so many miracles, so many signs and wonders. So these are the questions that we are going to address, okay? Now, these are very important, all right? These are critical to answer for people. These are the big questions that people have. These are the questions we will answer, but there's another question that I think is even more important than this, okay? And that's simply why. Why do we even care about this stuff? I mean, isn't faith just believing without evidence? What is evidence? Who needs evidence? I just have my Bible. I have my faith. Who needs this stuff? Who cares? I think more than simply asking these questions, I think there's something even more important, okay? And I want to talk about this. So this might be familiar to many of you, but for those of you here for the first time, I want to talk about this guy. His name is Marty Sampson. Okay? Has anybody heard of Hillsong? Anybody? Hillsong, of course, right? Every church in the world sings at least one of their songs on a Sunday morning. Probably one of the most famous music worship groups. I don't even know what you would call them, but one of the most famous ministries in the world. Well, in 2019, one of their singers-songwriters named Marty Sampson put out a post on social media saying that he was losing his faith. Okay, and just hearing this, I was like, whoa, this dude's from Hillsong. This is Hillsong we're talking about, And he had a pretty big post explaining why. So I dug into it, and I looked at some of the reasons why he gave, and a lot of the reasons he gave are some of the things that we're going to be talking about, some of our 10 questions, okay? Talks about many preachers falling, okay? And this is before even the pastor from New York, Hillsong, had his whole, controversy. I'm talking about miracles, Bible contradictions, hell, blind faith, science and religion, other religions. These are all things that he brought up as problems to him why he felt like he could no longer say that he had faith in Christianity. Now, while these things are very serious, and we are going to be talking about them, that's not what rattled me. Hey, me, I'm Mr. Apologist. I study this stuff. It's what I do all the time. That's not what rattled me. Of course, it rattled me the fact there was someone from Hillsong, but it was something else that he said over and over again. He had these objections. He said no one talks about it. Over and over again, he'd bring up an objection. No one talks about it. I've got this issue. No one talks about it. I have this issue. No one talks about it. That hurt me most. Okay, knowing that he goes to Hillsong, this huge church. And now look, I can't say anything about the church. It could just be him, his immediate community. But that was the biggest takeaway that I had from that. That there are these issues, these problems, things that people are wrestling with, struggling with. And yet he felt as if there was nobody around him talking about it. Now, this is just one prominent Christian that we get to hear about who felt like he had the need to share his story on social media. But you have to wonder how many other people are there as well in churches, Christian kids, adults, whatnot, going through the same thing. Well, let's look at some statistics. Okay, so according to a Barna research study, it says the percentage of teens who identify as atheist is double that of the general population. So just that little sliver, okay, of teenagers, the percentage of atheists in that little sliver is double that of the general population. 50 to 70% of young Christians leave the church by their college years. That's huge. That could be one of your sons, daughters, grandson, granddaughter, sister, brother, cousin, or whatever. Okay? 50 to 70% leave. Well, why? Why are they leaving? Okay, what are the reasons why they're leaving? Well, according to statistics, here are some of the reasons. Okay? They said learning about evolution when I went away to college. They said that rational thought makes religion go out the window. Lack of any sort of scientific or specific evidence of a creator. So these are the reasons why young people are giving, why they're leaving the faith. So, and these are just three of many. So to summarize, it's intellectual skepticism, unanswered questions, and they think that there are no reasons to believe that Christianity is actually true. So to summarize, no one talks about it. They've never been given these answers. They've never heard answers to any of the questions that we've seen. They go away to college and they hear something completely different and their faith is gone. But now the truth is, though, it's not that no one's talking about it. Because let's face it, we're being bombarded with ideas constantly. Think about how much time you have with the congregation. You have what, like an hour, 2 hours on a Sunday. Maybe, kids are going to a youth group, they're going to a small group. But how many hours of the day is filled with other stuff? Their friends at school, their teacher, social media, Hollywood. What has the greater percentage of their day? They're getting ideas. They're getting answers to these questions, but it's not our answers. So it's not that no one is talking about it. It's that as far as these kids are concerned, as far as Barney's concerned, the church isn't talking about it. So I just want to say, simply, we need to talk about it. More important than the answers, I think, is that we simply need to have a place, an avenue where we can talk about it. You think about this generation, what do they value nowadays? They value authenticity. They value vulnerability. They value transparency. They're okay with people having problems, but they just want to know that people are being real and being legit. They just want to know that somebody's asking these questions too, that they're not alone. So we need to talk about it, not only because the next generation needs it, but also, most importantly, the Bible commands it. Okay, the Bible commands it. So let's look and see what the Bible has to say about this. So the verse that we mentioned before, like the apologist's creed, as we call it. But in your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect. So this is 1 Peter 3:15. So you see that I have one word highlighted. That's the word defense. So in English, the word defense in Greek is apologia. So this is where we get the word apologetics. So apologetics is just making a defense for the truth of Christianity. Okay, so we're commanded to do that. Let's look at some more verses. Jude 1:3. Jude 1:3 says, "Dear friends, although I was very eager to write to you about the salvation we share, I felt compelled to write and urge you to contend for the faith that was once for all entrusted to God's holy people." So that word contend, that's a fighting word. You think about any kind of martial arts or contact sports, the number one contender, the contenders in the ring. It's using a fighting word to describe our attitude towards the faith that we have, how strongly we should be defending it. 2 Corinthians 10:5 says, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. All right? We demolish arguments, but not people. Okay? That's the key. Okay? That's the key. We are to demolish arguments, not people. We're trying to lead people to Christ by demolishing bad arguments. So, in the same spirit, let's go back to 1 Peter 3:15. Okay? So we need to do what we do with gentleness and respect. Everything comes from love. We destroy arguments, but not people. In fact, the most loving thing that we could do is eliminate any falsehoods that they're clinging to so that they can come to Christ. So now we get to see apologetics in action. Okay, Paul modeled it very well in Acts 17. I definitely recommend reading the entire chapter, but just looking at 2 verses. It says, as was his custom, Paul went into the synagogue, and on 3 Sabbath days he reasoned with them from the scriptures, explaining and proving that the Messiah had to suffer and rise from the dead. So basically, Paul made a case. Acts 17 teaches us how to do apologetics. Paul engaged in apologetics. So up until now, we've been looking at how to do apologetics. Okay? That we need to defend the Bible. We need to defend the church. But do you realize this isn't simply about defense? It's also an act of loving God. Okay? So Matthew 22:37, Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Okay, with all your mind. This is another way of loving God and worshiping God. He wants us to love him with our minds. So it's not that we come to church and we check our brains at the door, all right, and then we just want to get, our feelings tickled, okay? We need to love God with our mind. And this is one way that we do it. So the Bible commands us to make a case for the truth of Christianity, which is apologetics. It commands us to destroy arguments against Christianity, and it commands us to love God with all our minds. So then, in a practical sense, how do we apply this? Well, we need apologetics in order to, 1, influence the culture. Now, anybody who knows me knows that one of my biggest pet peeves is when Christians say, who cares about the culture? We don't need to worry about the culture. We just need to preach the gospel. So let me give you just one very simple, very trivial example of how influential the culture is. So, growing up, my wife and I, our families, Christmas just passed. Our families never did the Santa thing, okay? They never told us about Santa. And I'm not making any kind of statements about whether or not Christians should, discuss Santa. That's not my point. I'm just saying that our families never discussed Santa. So with my wife and I, our kids, we never made Santa a big deal either, okay? We never talked about Santa. Every present we have from Mommy and Daddy, love Mommy and Daddy. But for some reason, this Christmas season, Santa is all my daughter would talk about. All the time. How does he know when we're sleeping? How does he know when we're awake? Does he really have a list? He lives at the North Pole, and it's just like, where could my daughter have possibly gotten all of these ideas from? She goes to a Christian school. They don't talk about Santa there. But it could be school. It could definitely be school. Where else? TV. Absolutely. What else?
With friends.
Friends. That's the big one. Santa's everywhere. Stores.
Yeah.
Music, Santa Claus is coming to town. So you see how influential, just this silly little example, how influential culture is. My daughter was just immersed in Santa Claus the whole season. One of our favorite things to do, the Christmas season, just to drive around the neighborhood looking at lights, okay? I don't care about presents, that's all I care about, looking at lights. Santa Claus blowing up everywhere on people's roofs, okay? And once again, something so silly and so trivial, just Santa Claus, okay? Now think about all of the ideas that are floating around in culture. If you think about culture, culture is like the air that we breathe. It's like if we were fish, it's like the water we're swimming in. It affects us. Even if you don't even think about it, we're simply immersed in it. And the culture is full of ideas and beliefs, things that we simply take for granted now. The next generation, this current generation, has a completely different idea of what a family is supposed to look like, what a marriage is supposed to look like. Nobody even has to tell them anything. They could just turn on their television or hear somebody on social media and whatnot. We need to influence the culture. Okay? That's just a pet peeve of mine. People who say that, who cares about the culture? Yeah. It's critical that we influence the culture. That's the medium through which the gospel is transmitted. Okay? You hear about, Bible translations. A lot of it is simply translating the Bible in the way we speak and the way we present the gospel to the next generation. They need to be able to understand it, understand these concepts. Of course, we need apologetics to strengthen our faith individually. Like J.D. was saying, he hit a point where it was critical, the things that he learned that kept him grounded. Some people think, apologetics is the antithesis of faith. If you have faith, you don't need apologetics. That could not be further from the truth. I'm so much stronger in my faith now because I believe completely this is true. There's no way this isn't true. It's through the study of apologetics. It's strengthened my faith. And then, of course, to evangelize unbelievers. People have questions, and they have more questions, and more questions, and more questions. To evangelize, we need to be able to answer people's questions. Okay? Water. So to summarize, we need to talk about it. Okay? We absolutely need to talk about it. It's something critical, these big questions, these big issues. Hey, what are you wrestling with? What are you thinking about? What's the latest topic that, on social media? What's the latest trend on social media? Why do you think that's the case? Why is this or that trending? So let me offer some ways that I think, some things that I think we need to do. So I think we need to create a safe space in church, okay? I'm not talking about puppies and coloring books, okay? I just mean we need to create an environment where people feel safe that they can doubt out loud, that they can ask questions. I know that as a teacher, I always tell my students, first day of class, and maybe for the first few weeks of class, if you want to succeed, you have to ask questions. Do not be afraid to ask questions. For every one student who's brave enough to raise their hand and ask a question, there's another 10 students that I see, they're like, oh, I'm so glad they asked, right? That's always the case. People feel afraid to ask, especially in church. People think that church is like this super judgmental environment where you can't have doubts, that you have to come in and put on this fake face like everything is okay. We need people to know that this is a safe space, that you can ask your questions. You can bring your problems. You can doubt, that we are here for you. Jude 1:22 says, be merciful to those who doubt. There it is. It's codified in Scripture. We need to be merciful to those who doubt. Also, we need to initiate the conversation. Don't just wait for people to come to us with questions. We need to be talking about these things from the platform. I mean, my goodness, 2020, did people ever have questions in 2020? Why would God allow this? Why would God allow that? All right, there's been a ton of that. People are looking for answers, okay? But more than that, we cannot wait for people to ask. We need to be proactive, and we need to initiate the conversation. And then, of course, we need to seek training. Tons of questions. There's tons of things that we're not going to know. Seek training. This is why we're doing what we're doing. This is why New York Apologetics exists. I know for this one, I'm preaching to the choir because you are here, but still, this is important. We need to seek training, actively seek training, and get answers to these questions. So these 10 questions that we're going to talk about. Okay? So over the next 10 months, these are the 10 questions that we're going to be talking about. But now, this is going to take us, let's say, a year to get through all of these questions. I don't want us to wait a year until we start engaging in spiritual conversations. We need to start doing it now. Just start asking questions to other people, or just asking, hey, do you have any thoughts, any ideas? I don't know the answer to that, but wow, I'm really glad that you asked me, that you trusted me enough to ask. So what I want to do is, I just want to give some general strategies when we have questions from other people. Okay, whether it's a church member, a family member, what are some general things to keep in mind? Okay, that's general strategy. So the first thing to keep in mind, who's asking? Who's asking you these questions? Okay, generally we can categorize people into 3 different categories. Okay, so you have your seekers, you have your skeptics, and then you have your cynics. So the seeker, this is the person, like, the parable of the soils. This is the person who's just ready for the gospel. Maybe they don't even need apologetics. I'm not saying that if someone's like, please tell me about Jesus. Hold on, I need to give you the Kalam cosmological argument first. Okay, this person might be ready. Or they just have, a few little surface questions and they're good. There's then going to be the skeptic. That's someone, they might be an honest seeker of truth, but, it's not going to be easy. Okay, they want you to work to get them to believe that Christianity is true. They want their questions answered, but at least, they might be honestly seeking out those answers. And then finally, we have the cynic. This is the person that they're not honest at all. They just want to mess you up. They just want to give you a hard time. You're going to find these people on the internet, all right? So these are the ones just throwing out these jabs at you like, prove your magic sky fairy exists, okay? There are going to be people out there that simply want to tear you down. They want to mock you. They want to waste your time. They want to make you angry, make you feel like a fool. Okay? Now, while it is important that we try to give an answer to everyone, there are some people that they are just there to tear you down. Jesus dealt with these people, and he told us how to deal with these people. Jesus says, do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. The gospel is precious. God's word is precious. I know a lot of people, when they start down the path of apologetics, they get pulled into so many fights and arguments, and it destroys their own spirit, and it brings them down. Okay? We need to guard ourselves. Look for that good soil. Look for the fertile soil. The people who, maybe they might not seem like they're super excited, but they're still, they're reasonable. They're with you. They're going to have a good attitude about things. More with Jesus, okay? It says, then the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap Jesus in his words. So the Pharisees, they were out to trap him. They were asking him questions just to trap him, to make him look bad, okay? This is just a warning that these people do exist, okay? There are people out there who, they are not sincere, all right? They just want to mess you up. They want to make you look bad, look dumb in front of all their friends and share it with the world. Matthew 21, 23 to 24. Jesus entered the temple courts, and while he was teaching, the chief priests and the elders of the people came to him. By what authority are you doing these things? They asked. And who gave you this authority? Again, they're just trying to corner him. They're trying to trap him. Jesus replied, I will also ask you one question. If you answer me, I will tell you by what authority I am doing these things. So if you know the rest of the story, Jesus actually turns it back around on them. All right? Jesus was slick. If you want to know how to really deal with answers and tough questions, read the Gospels. Okay? All these examples were from Matthew. Read Matthew. But this also illustrates something else what Jesus does here. He says, I will also ask you one question. Okay? It's okay to ask questions too. Okay? Well, how do you know what kind of person is approaching you? Which of the categories that they fall in. So you can easily ask them a simple question. Hey, that's a great question. But can I ask you a few questions first just to make sure that we're on the same page? You saw the questions that we had. Oh, is it intolerant to think Jesus is the only way? Oh, wow, all right, that's a good question. But can you just tell me, what do you mean by intolerant? Is it wrong to be intolerant? Let's talk about that. Okay? So make sure that you're on the same page as them, and don't let someone else get the best of them. Don't let them corner you. You're allowed to ask questions too. Also, be humble and honest. Okay, that's key. Like we learned before, we're not here just to beat people down. We're not here to destroy people. We're here to destroy arguments. You need to be humble about it. Aha, I got you. I cornered you. Take that. If you see people are getting uneasy, you need to back up. You might win the argument, but you lost the soul, okay? And we're not about that, okay? Gentleness and respect. And you got to be honest. Always be honest. Don't try to make something up on the spot, because people want authenticity, especially the next generation. They want authenticity, all right? That's a great question. I've never thought of that before. Can I get back to you sometime? Oh, man, yeah, that's great. I've never really studied that. That's not my expertise. Can I introduce you to a friend of mine who is more knowledgeable about that? Never, ever fake it. Okay, never fake it. People will see through you immediately, or they'll just Google it, and they'll make you look dumb right then and there. Okay? That's what's going to happen too. So just a few things to keep in mind, okay? Know who you're interacting with. Is it a friend? Is it somebody that you know? Is it a stranger on the internet? Okay? Someone who's just looking to give you a hard time. Is somebody sincere? Are they really willing to wrestle through some of these things? Don't be afraid to ask questions back. Gauge where the person is. See where they're at spiritually. See if they're serious about the conversation, if they really want an answer, or if they're just looking to gotcha. They're just looking to stick you or get you. Be humble. Always be humble and be honest. If you don't know something, admit it. Admit it when you don't know something. Okay? So this was just a really quick introduction, an explanation of what we do and why we do it. Okay? There's statistics showing that more and more young people are pulling away from the church. And that's normal. I know that's normal. I've been in church my entire life. Okay? It's something that happens. They leave in their teenage years, they come back when they have kids. It is a trend. The problem is that nowadays there's less and less of them coming back because their questions aren't being answered. They don't think that church is a safe space where they can doubt out loud. And we need to cultivate that. We need to create that. So, I have a challenge for our next meeting. I want to challenge you all to initiate the spiritual conversation. Don't be afraid of them. Even if you don't have all of the answers. Once again, we have a full year to go over these 10 questions, okay? Start a conversation. Just get to know somebody. The relationship might be even more important than the answer. Okay? Because as we know in apologetics, sometimes the issue isn't really the issue. The question isn't really what's going on. It's something in here, something in their heart, and the question is just kind of their defense mechanism. The objection is their defense mechanism. I can't believe in a big magical sky fairy. And it's really that they got hurt. They got hurt by somebody in the church and they're lashing out. So it's something that we need to keep that in mind. Initiate a spiritual conversation. And then please talk to your pastor, to your church leaders. We want people to know, look, this is important. The next generation craves it and they need it. They want these answers. Talk to your friends. Invite your friends. Invite your family. We want to build a network. We want to pack the room out, okay? So we can get these answers out to everyone. So our next meeting is going to be Tuesday, February 23rd. So we're going to be answering the question, why believe God exists? Why should I even think that God exists? Okay? So I'm going to be giving two arguments, two reasons why I think that God exists. So we're going to be going from science, logic, to ethics, to philosophy. Two reasons to think that God does in fact exist. So that's going to be the first of our 10 questions. And then we're going to take it from there. NewYorkApologetics.com. Check us out, see what kind of resources that we have there. Facebook.com. Look us up. This is where we're going to be putting out any information, when our next meeting is, the topic, and just reminders. Please let people know about this. Please share, like, share, and all that good stuff.